They didn't see a man. They saw a problem, a body taking up space where comfort lived, a shadow where order was supposed to be. The restaurant doors swung open and closed behind him, letting in a slice of winter air every time someone else walked through. Clean coats, confident steps, laughter that didn't pause to notice who it brushed past. He stood just inside the threshold, hands tucked into the pockets of a jacket that had seen better years. The zipper didn't work. The collar curled in on itself like it had given up trying to stand tall. He waited. That was his mistake. Waiting makes people uncomfortable. Waiting invites judgment. Waiting tells the world you don't belong. A hostess glanced at him once, just once, and then looked away like eye contact might turn into a conversation. Her smile stayed glued on for the next customer, bright and rehearsed, a practiced kindness that came with reservations and credit cards. With him, there was nothing. No greeting, no "can I help you?" Just a pause, a recalculation, and then dismissal. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other, feeling the heat from the dining room lamps and the cold seeping up through the thin soles of his shoes. They were clean, at least. Scuffed, yes, old, definitely, but clean. He made sure of that every morning. Some habits don't die, even when everything else does. Behind him, a couple whispered, "Why he's standing there?" Probably asking for something. Manager gonna have to deal with that. Deal with that. Not him. That. The words landed harder than they were meant to. They always did. He kept his eyes forward, fixed on the long wooden bar where glasses clinked and plates slid across polished surfaces. The smell of food hit him in waves. Grilled meat, warm bread, something sweet in the air. His stomach tightened, not from hunger alone, but from memory. He used to sit at places like this. Not fancy, but comfortable. The kind of spot where nobody rushed you and nobody looked twice at what you wore. That was another life, another version of him. A man in a crisp button-down leaned over to the hostess, murmuring something with a smirk. She nodded, lips pressed tight, then finally turned back toward him. "Sir," she said, lowering her voice, "we're fully booked." He nodded slowly, calm, controlled. "I'm just here to eat." His voice was steady, deep, measured, not asking for pity. Her eyes flicked down, then back up. She didn't ask how many, didn't ask if he wanted a seat at the bar. "Yeah, we can't help you right now." Behind her, a server rolled her eyes. Another guest sighed loudly, the universal sound of inconvenience. He felt it then, the familiar heat rising in his chest. Not anger, something heavier, the weight of being misunderstood so often that you stop trying to correct it. He stepped aside, back towards the wall, giving the doorway space. That was another rule he'd learned. Don't block traffic. Don't make yourself noticeable. Don't give anyone a reason to say you're in the way. A security guard appeared from nowhere, like he'd been summoned by discomfort alone. Big guy, black suit, earpiece curled tight. "You good, man?" the guard asked, but it wasn't a question. "I'm fine." The guard scanned him top to bottom, eyes lingering just a second too long on the jacket, the shoes, the tired lines around his face. "You can't loiter here." "I'm not loitering," he replied. "I was trying to get a table." The guard chuckled. Not unkindly, but not respectfully either. "Yeah, not tonight." A pause. A beat where pride wrestled with reality. "All right," he said finally. He turned and stepped back out into the cold. Outside, the city kept moving like nothing had happened. Cars rolled past, headlights streaking through the dusk. People hurried by, wrapped in scarves and conversations, carrying bags filled with things they'd chosen, things they'd paid for, things that told the world they belonged somewhere. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, breathing slow, counting each inhale like he used to when things got loud inside his head. 1, 2, 3. Across the street, a man laughed too loudly, leaning against a shiny black SUV. Somewhere above, a train rumbled, shaking the bones of the block. He pulled his jacket tighter and started walking. 2 blocks down, there was a convenience store that never changed. Same flickering sign, same cracked window near the ATM, same bored cashier behind the counter who had learned how to look through people instead of at them. That was fine. Invisible was easier. He grabbed a bottle of water and a cheap sandwich from the cooler, the kind wrapped in plastic, bread already a little stale. It would do. It always did. At the counter, the cashier eyed him like she was counting exits. "That's all?" she asked. "That's it." He slid a few bills across the counter. She checked them carefully, too carefully, holding each one up to the light. He didn't react, didn't sigh, didn't roll his eyes. He'd learned that lesson too. Any sign of irritation turns suspicion into certainty. She finally rang it up and pushed the change toward him with 2 fingers, like contact might contaminate her. "Have a good night," she said, flat and automatic. "You too," he replied. Outside again, he found a bench near the bus stop and sat down, unwrapping the sandwich slowly. Around him, the city exhaled. Sirens in the distance, music leaking from car windows, life in motion. A group of teenagers passed, laughing, one of them nudging another and nodding in his direction. He caught a word, bum, and let it pass through him like wind through a broken window. He took a bite, chewed, swallowed. People thought dignity was loud, that it announced itself, that it wore tailored suits and spoke in confident tones. They were wrong. Dignity was sitting on a cold bench, eating a bad sandwich, and refusing to let the world turn you bitter. He finished half the sandwich and wrapped the rest back up, saving it for later. Old habits again. You never knew when later would come. The bus arrived with a hiss of brakes. He stood, slipped the sandwich into his pocket, and climbed aboard. The driver glanced at him, then at the pass he held out. A brief hesitation, then a nod. He took a seat near the back. As the bus lurched forward, his reflection stared back at him from the darkened window. He barely recognized the man looking back. Same eyes, same shape of a face, but worn down, weathered by years that didn't leave visible scars so much as quiet erosion. He thought about the restaurant, the looks, the way people's shoulders had tensed when he'd stood too close to comfort. They didn't know him. They didn't know where he'd been. They didn't know what he'd lost, and they definitely didn't know what was coming. But that part was still locked away, hidden behind a door he didn't even know existed yet. The bus rattled on through the city, carrying him toward a small apartment on the edge of town. 1 room, bare walls, a mattress on the floor, and a table by the window where unopened mail piled up like quiet accusations. Bills, notices, envelopes he didn't recognize. He stepped off at his stop and walked the last block, hands deep in his pockets, breath fogging the air. The building loomed ahead, brick chipped and tired, but standing. Still standing. Just like him. Inside, the hallway smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. He climbed the stairs slowly, knees protesting each step. At his door, he paused, listening out of habit. Silence. He unlocked it and stepped inside. The room greeted him with darkness and stillness. He flicked on the light. Same as always. Nothing had changed. He dropped his jacket on the chair, sat on the edge of the mattress, and exhaled deeply. The kind of breath you don't realize you're holding until it leaves. For a moment, he let his head fall into his hands, not because of the restaurant, not because of the looks, but because being unseen for so long starts to make you wonder if you ever mattered at all. He straightened up, pushed the thought away, and stood. Survival didn't allow room for spirals. On the table, the stack of mail caught his eye. He ignored it at first, moving toward the sink, turning on the tap. Rusty water sputtered, then cleared. He took a sip, wiped his mouth with the back of his hand, and finally turned back toward the table. One envelope sat on top, thicker than the rest, different, cream-colored, no return address he recognized, his name printed cleanly across the front, spelled correctly, no red stamps, no threats. Just his name. He stared at it for a long moment. Then he sat down. The envelope felt heavier than it should have. Not in weight, in meaning. He turned it over once, twice, ran his thumb along the edge like he was testing whether it might bite back. Life had taught him to be careful with surprises. Most of them came with a price. Slowly, he slid a finger under the seal and tore it open. Inside was another envelope, thicker, legal-looking, crisp paper that didn't belong in a room like this. On top sat a single sheet, folded neatly, as if whoever sent it believed order still mattered. He unfolded it. The words didn't make sense at first. They floated on the page, disconnected, refusing to line up into anything real. We regret to inform you, estate of, beneficiary. He read it again. Then again, his chest tightened. A name jumped out at him, one he hadn't seen in years, one he didn't say out loud anymore. His uncle. The room seemed to shrink as memories rushed in uninvited. Summer afternoons, long talks on a sagging porch, a voice that always sounded calm, even when the world wasn't. His uncle had been the only one who never looked at him like a problem. He sat down slowly, letters shaking slightly in his hands, and let himself drift back. He hadn't always been invisible. There was a time when people knew his name, when neighbors waved, when his phone rang for reasons other than overdue notices. He grew up in a small place where everybody struggled, but nobody pretended otherwise. His mother worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. His uncle filled in the gaps, not with money, but with presence, advice, guidance. The kind of man who didn't talk much, but when he did, you listened. Head up, his uncle used to say. People watch how you carry yourself before they ever hear what you say. That lesson stuck, even when everything else fell apart. After his mother passed, the ground shifted beneath his feet. Bills piled up, the apartment slipped away, jobs came and went, warehouse shifts, night security, delivery work. He never complained. Complaining didn't pay rent. His uncle had offered help once, just once. "Come work with me," he'd said. "Learn something real." But pride is a dangerous thing when you don't know how to use it right. "I got it," he'd replied back then. He didn't. Years passed. Distance grew. Calls became texts. Texts became silence. And then, nothing. He assumed his uncle had moved on, started a new life, forgotten him. That assumption sat heavy now as he stared at the letter. Hands trembling, he scanned further down the page. "You are hereby named the sole beneficiary." Sole beneficiary. His breath caught. There was a number mentioned next, a figure so large his mind refused to process it properly. He counted the zeros once, twice. His heart began to pound, not with excitement, but disbelief. This wasn't hope. This was shock. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling, letting the words echo in his head. Estate. Assets. Trust. This wasn't a scam. The paper felt too real, too official. Still, he didn't smile. Not yet. Because life had taught him another lesson too. Nothing this big ever comes without a shadow. He picked up the phone listed at the bottom of the letter, hesitated, set it back down, picked it up again, then dialed. It rang 3 times. "Law offices?" A calm voice answered. He swallowed. "Yeah, I'm calling about a letter, about an estate." There was a pause, keys clicking in the background. "Name?" He gave it. Another pause, longer this time. "Yes," the voice said, tone shifting, subtly but noticeably. "We've been expecting your call." Those words landed like a stone in his chest. Expecting. They set an appointment for the next morning. When the call ended, the room felt different. Not brighter, not better, just heavier. He sat there for a long time, the unopened sandwich still in his pocket, forgotten. Sleep didn't come easily that night. Every time he closed his eyes, numbers flashed behind them. Faces from the restaurant, the hostess's polite dismissal, the security guard's smirk. He pushed the thoughts away. Tomorrow was tomorrow. The office sat downtown, all glass and steel, the kind of building where reflections mattered. He stood across the street, staring up at it, adjusting the collar of his jacket. For a second, doubt crept in. He didn't belong here. That voice, the old one, whispered loud. But then he remembered his uncle's words. Head up. He crossed the street. Inside, the lobby smelled like money and polish. Everything gleamed. Shoes clicked sharply against marble floors. Conversations hummed quietly, important sounding and controlled. The receptionist looked up, eyes flicking to his jacket, then back to the screen. "Can I help you?" He gave his name. She blinked, checked the screen again, then looked at him. Really looked at him this time. "Yes," she said quickly. "They're ready for you." A door opened. A man in a tailored suit stepped out, hand extended. "Mr. he said warmly, "thank you for coming in." The handshake was firm, respectful. It felt unfamiliar. They walked down a long hallway into a quiet room with a polished table and leather chairs. He sat, hands folded, listening as the lawyer spoke. Details flowed, carefully explained, patiently repeated. The estate, the assets, the accounts. $26 million. Overnight. No loopholes, no tricks. His uncle had built quietly, invested smartly, never said a word. And when he passed, he left everything to the one person he believed would understand what it meant. "You," the lawyer said simply. Silence filled the room. He stared at his hands. 26 million. The number didn't change who he was. Not yet. But it changed how the world would look at him, once it knew. When the meeting ended, the lawyer handed him a folder thick with documents. "Take your time," he said. "Nothing needs to be rushed." Outside, the city looked the same, but he wasn't. Still, he didn't go shopping, didn't call anyone, didn't celebrate. He went home. Same bus, same seat near the back, same jacket. Because the thing about money is, it doesn't erase memory. And memory has a way of keeping you grounded. That night, he stood by the window of his small apartment, city lights flickering in the distance. Tomorrow, he thought, tomorrow the world would still see him the same way. And that was exactly how he wanted it. Money doesn't make noise when it shows up. Not real money. It doesn't kick the door in, doesn't announce itself, doesn't beg for attention. It settles in quietly, like a secret. The next morning, the sun came through the blinds the same way it always did. Thin lines of light across the wall, dust floating lazily in the air, the city waking up without a clue that anything had changed. He sat on the edge of the mattress, shoes still on, folder resting on his lap. $26 million. The words still didn't sit right in his mouth. Saying them out loud felt disrespectful somehow, like bragging about something sacred. He opened the folder again, flipping through pages filled with language he'd never had a reason to learn before. Trusts, holdings, accounts, numbers that used to belong to a different universe. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Hello?" "Good morning," the lawyer said. "Just checking in. Everything okay?" "Yeah," he replied. "Just processing?" A soft chuckle on the other end. Understanding. "That's normal," the lawyer said. "Very normal." They spoke briefly. Next steps, timelines, logistics. When the call ended, the silence rushed back in. He stood and walked to the mirror mounted crookedly on the wall, looked himself in the eye. Same face, same tired lines, same calm. No crown appeared, no glow, no sudden transformation. Just him. He turned away. Later that afternoon, he found himself back on the street. Not because he needed to be, but because it was familiar. Comfort lived in routine. He walked past the same restaurant from the night before. The windows were bright, busy, alive. For a moment, something twisted inside him. Not revenge, not anger, curiosity. What would they do if they knew? He didn't stop, just kept walking. Power didn't need to prove itself. Not yet. By evening, the weight of it all pressed down harder. He sat at the small table, paperwork spread out like a map to a place he didn't know how to reach yet. Memories crept in again. His uncle's laugh. Rare, but real. The way he moved quietly through rooms, never seeking approval. The way he always paid in cash, always tipped heavy, always left before anyone noticed. Money moves better in silence, his uncle used to say. Now he understood. A knock at the door jolted him upright, sharp, unexpected. He froze. Nobody knocked on his door. Another knock, louder. "Yeah?" he called cautiously. "Management." He opened the door halfway. The building manager stood there, arms crossed, eyes already annoyed. "Rent," the man said flatly. He nodded. "I know." "You've been behind." "I said I know." The manager sighed, glancing past him into the room, bare, quiet. "End of the week," the man warned. "That's it." "I'll handle it," he said. The manager scoffed softly. "Sure." Door closed. Silence again. He leaned his forehead against the wood for a second, then laughed quietly to himself. If only he knew. But he wasn't ready to flip the switch yet. Money changes relationships faster than it changes lives. He wasn't about to rush that. He nodded and walked away. Money hadn't taught him kindness. Life had. At a bank branch downtown, the teller's smile faltered when she saw him step up. "Account?" she asked. He slid the documents across the counter. Her eyes scanned them, then widened, then narrowed again like her brain was catching up to her eyes. "One moment," she said quickly. She disappeared into the back. Minutes passed. People shifted behind him, a cough, a sigh. Finally, a manager emerged, older, composed, respectful. "Mr. he said, extending a hand, "please come with me." The room they sat in was quiet, private. The manager explained things carefully, respectfully, as numbers updated on a screen. Balances changed. Zeros multiplied. Just like that. $26 million became more than words. It became reality. The manager smiled. "Congratulations." He nodded. Thank you. No celebration, no call to anyone. He left the bank the same way he entered, unnoticed. Outside, the city roared back into focus. People rushed, cars honked, life continued. He stood on the sidewalk, breathing it in. For the first time, he understood something clearly. The world hadn't been wrong about him. It had just been incomplete. They judged the cover because they didn't know the story. And soon, very soon, they were going to read it. Nothing about him had changed. That was the point. Same jacket, same shoes, same quiet walk. The money sat somewhere far away, in accounts, in numbers, in systems built for people who already belonged. It didn't ride the bus with him, didn't warm his hands, didn't soften the looks he got when he stepped into certain spaces. He wanted to see something, not prove anything, not embarrass anyone, just observe. The restaurant was busy again. Same glow behind the glass, same polished wood, same laughter spilling out into the street like it owned the night. He stood across the road for a moment, watching people move in and out with purpose, confidence, the unspoken certainty that the door would open for them. He crossed. Inside, the warmth hit him first, then the smell, then the looks. Not everyone looked, but enough did. The hostess was the same one from before. Same tight smile, same eyes trained to measure value before offering welcome. She saw him and froze for a half-second. That half-second told him everything. "Oh," she said. Hi?" He nodded politely. "I was hoping to get a table." Her eyes flicked past him, scanning the room as if it might suddenly fill up beyond capacity. "We're pretty full tonight." He glanced around. Empty seats at the bar, a couple tables waiting to be cleared. "I don't mind waiting," he said calmly. Behind him, someone scoffed. A man in a blazer leaned toward his date, whispering something not meant to be heard. She glanced back at him, then away quickly. The hostess shifted her weight. "Sir," she said quietly, "maybe there's somewhere else?" "I'm good here," he replied. Not rude, not raised, just firm. She hesitated, then motioned toward the bar. "You can sit there, for now." For now. He walked over and took a seat. The bartender glanced at him, then at the hostess, then back at him. "What'll it be?" the bartender asked, tone neutral. "Water's fine." An eyebrow lifted. "Just water?" "That's good." The glass arrived with a soft clink. Time passed. People came in. People sat down. Laughter rose and fell. Plates moved. Orders were taken. No one checked on him. The bartender refilled other glasses, avoiding his gaze. A server passed by twice, both times stopping just short of his seat before moving on. He sipped his water slowly. This was the part nobody liked to talk about, the quiet disrespect, the kind that didn't scream but still cut deep. He caught his reflection in the mirror behind the bar. Same calm face, same steady eyes. He was worth more than everyone in this room combined, and not a soul knew it. A man slid onto the bar stool beside him, glancing sideways. "Hey, you waiting on someone?" the man asked, casual but curious. "No," he replied. The man nodded slowly. "They gonna get to you?" "Eventually." The man laughed lightly, turning back to his drink. "Eventually." Near the entrance, the security guard from the other night stood watch. Same suit, same posture, same judgment. Their eyes met briefly. The guard frowned, then started walking over. "Sir," the guard said quietly, "we'd talked before." "Yes," he replied. "You still can't sit here all night without ordering." I ordered water. The guard sighed. That's not what I mean. A pause. People nearby pretended not to listen while listening closely. I'll order food, he said. The guard's eyes flicked to the bartender. Go ahead, the guard said, stepping back slightly. The menu landed in front of him like a challenge. He didn't rush, read it carefully. Prices didn't faze him. They felt surreal now, almost humorous. I'll have the steak, he said. Medium. The bartender blinked. That'll be... I know, he said calmly. The bartender nodded and walked away. Conversations around him softened. Curiosity crept in. Who was this guy? A woman a few seats down leaned toward her friend. I thought he was homeless, she whispered. Her friend shrugged. Guess not. He heard it. He always did. The steak arrived, perfectly cooked, well presented. He ate slowly, deliberately, like every bite deserved respect. No rush, no apology. For the first time that night, a server asked if he needed anything else. I'm good, he said. When he finished, he placed his napkin neatly on the plate. Check, please. The bartender printed it and slid it over, face carefully neutral. He glanced at the total, then reached into his pocket. The room felt suddenly still. He placed a card on the counter. Black. The bartender's hand paused mid-reach. A flicker of surprise crossed his face. He ran the card. The machine beeped once. Approved. No hesitation. The bartender looked up at him differently now. Thank you, the bartender said. He nodded. As he stood to leave, the hostess watched him from across the room, confusion written plainly across her face. The guard stepped aside, giving him space this time. Outside, the cold air hit his face again. He exhaled. They still didn't know, but they were starting to feel it. And that feeling, that quiet discomfort when assumptions crack, that was only the beginning. The city has a way of circling back on itself. Same streets, same faces, different truths. He didn't plan the reveal. That's the thing people never understand. Real power doesn't wake up thinking about how to impress strangers. It moves when it has to. No sooner, no later. The next evening, the restaurant was louder than usual. A private event. A fundraiser, maybe. Valet parked out front, people dressed like confidence was stitched into their clothes. He walked past the line. Heads turned. Not because they recognized him, but because they didn't. The valet stepped forward, hand out. Sir, this is a private... I know, he said calmly. I'm expected. The valet hesitated, eyes scanning him for a badge of belonging. Name? He gave it. The valet frowned, checked a tablet, then frowned harder. Oh, the valet said quietly. Right this way. The door opened. And everything changed. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and money. Conversations hummed in polished tones. Laughter bounced off glass walls. People held drinks they didn't pay for and talked about causes they'd never lived. He stepped in. Conversations paused, just a little. The hostess from before froze. Her smile faltered completely this time. She whispered urgently to the manager, who looked up sharply, eyes narrowing, then widening. The manager straightened instantly. Mr. he said, walking over with both hands extended. Welcome. We're honored you could join us. Honored. The word echoed. People nearby turned fully now, curiosity sharpening into attention. Table's ready for you, the manager continued. Right this way. He followed. Past the bar where he'd been ignored, past the stools where assumptions had been made, past faces that now tried to rearrange their memories. Whispers followed him like shadows. Who is that? Isn't that the guy from the other night? No way. At the table, a man in an expensive suit stood quickly. "Good to finally meet you," the man said, offering his hand. "I've heard a lot." He shook it. "Likewise." Someone pulled out a chair for him. Another poured him water. Someone else laughed too loud at something he hadn't said. Across the room, the security guard watched, confusion etched deep into his face. The manager leaned in, voice low. "Sir, if there's anything you need, anything at all, please don't hesitate." He smiled faintly. "I'm good," he said, still polite, still calm. A woman at the table finally asked the question hanging in the air. "So, how did you get involved with all this?" Every ear leaned closer. He paused. Not for drama, for truth. "My uncle," he said simply. "He believed in investing quietly." A murmur rippled. Another man blinked. "Your uncle wouldn't happen to be—" "Yes," he said. Silence fell like a dropped glass. Eyes widened, mouths parted, mental calculations scrambled. $26 million landed in the room without being spoken. It didn't need words. The hostess looked like she might faint. The guard swallowed hard. The bartender stared. Nobody apologized out loud. They didn't need to. It was written all over their faces. He sat back, letting the moment breathe, not enjoying it, but honoring it, because this wasn't revenge. This was reality catching up. Later, as the event wound down, the manager approached him again. "I just want to say," the man began carefully, "we pride ourselves on treating all our guests with respect." He looked at the manager evenly. "I know," he said. Nothing more. Outside, cameras flashed for someone else. Valets opened doors. The city buzzed. He stepped into the night the same way he always did, quietly. The difference was simple now. They would never look at someone like him the same way again. And neither would he. The applause wasn't loud. That's what stayed with him. No standing ovation, no dramatic moment where the room froze and then erupted. Just a quiet shift, like the air itself had learned something new and didn't know how to say it out loud yet. That was fine. He didn't need noise. Outside, the night wrapped around him gently. The city lights blurred as he walked, not fast, not slow, just steady. The valet called after him, suddenly eager. "Sir, your car?" He stopped. "I don't have one," he said. The valet blinked. "Oh, I can get you one." He smiled, small and sincere. "I'm good." He walked past the line of luxury vehicles and down the block, where the sounds changed. Less laughter, more real life. A siren somewhere far away, music drifting out of an open window, somebody arguing on a phone about something that mattered to them. This was the city he knew. Money hadn't erased it. It hadn't replaced it. It had just added distance, if he let it. He didn't plan to. The next morning, he went back to the bank. Same branch, same doors, different reception. People noticed him now. Heads lifted, smiles appeared faster. The manager came out personally this time, greeting him like an old friend. "Good to see you again," the manager said. "Morning," he replied. They sat down, talked logistics, foundations, trust structures, advisors. Words floated around the room like they belonged there. He listened carefully. "Is there anything specific you want to prioritize?" the manager asked. He didn't answer right away. Images filled his mind instead. The bench by the bus stop, the cashier checking his bills twice, the hostess who never said his name, the security guard who thought presence meant permission. "I want to build something," he said finally. The manager leaned forward. "What kind of something?" "Something that doesn't need people to know who I am," he replied. The manager smiled. Those are usually the ones that last. Days passed. Quietly. He paid his rent. All of it. Early. The building manager stuttered through a forced congratulations. He nodded politely. Nothing flashy. He replaced the mattress, bought groceries that didn't come in plastic triangles, still took the bus, still wore the jacket. People noticed, but not enough to ask questions. He liked it that way. One afternoon, he sat in a small cafe, not fancy, just honest, and watched a young man argue with a barista over change. The kid looked tired, defensive, proud in the way only someone with nothing to fall back on can be. The barista sighed. "Sir, it's short." The kid's shoulders tensed. He stood up. "I got it," he said, stepping forward. He placed a bill on the counter. The barista blinked. "Oh, thank you." The kid turned, eyes wide. "I didn't ask." "I know," he said gently. "Still counts." The kid hesitated, then nodded once. "Appreciate you." He sat back down. No lesson given, no speech delivered, just help. That was the kind of wealth he believed in. Weeks later, the restaurant reached out. An email, carefully worded, apologetic without saying sorry. They wanted to host a dinner in his honor, celebrate partnership, community, growth. He read it once, then deleted it. Not out of spite, out of clarity. Respect that shows up late isn't respect, it's reaction. And he didn't need reactions anymore. One evening, he returned to the same bus stop bench. Same place, same cold metal. Different feeling. He sat there, watching people pass. A woman in scrubs, a man in a suit, a kid with headphones too big for his head. Nobody looked twice at him. Perfect. He thought about his uncle, how he never chased acknowledgement, how he moved through life like a quiet current, shaping things without announcing himself. This money wasn't a reward, it was a responsibility. To move differently, to see people fully, to remember what it felt like to be reduced to a glance. The city lights flickered on as the sun dipped low. He stood up. Somewhere behind him, someone laughed. Somewhere else, someone struggled. The world stayed balanced that way, as it always had. The difference now was simple. He had the means to help tilt it, just a little, toward dignity. And he would. Not loudly, not publicly, but consistently. Because the real lesson wasn't that a beggar became a millionaire. It was that the world mistook silence for weakness and humility for absence. And he never corrected them. He just lived better than their assumptions. Years later, nobody remembered the fundraiser. They remembered the change. Not because his name was everywhere, but because it wasn't. A new community center opened 3 blocks from the bus stop. No marble floors, no donor wall carved in gold, just wide windows, bright lights, and doors that stayed open late. Kids came after school, not because they were forced, but because someone there looked them in the eye and listened. A scholarship fund appeared quietly. No press release, no interviews, just checks that showed up right when tuition felt impossible. People started saying things like, "Someone's looking out for us. Don't know who it is, but it's real." That was enough. Different hostess, new staff, fresh paint. The place looked cleaner, but not because of the walls. It was the way people were greeted now. Welcome in. Take your time. No rush. No scanning. No measuring. He stood at the door for a second, unnoticed, then smiled, and kept walking. The world never found out the full story. They didn't need to, because the truth was never about the $26 million. It was about the night he was treated like nothing and chose not to become bitter. It was about the power of restraint, the strength of dignity, the kind of wealth that doesn't disappear when the numbers do. Somewhere, a kid who never met him would grow up believing the world had room for him. Somewhere, a tired mother would sleep easier knowing rent was covered. Somewhere, a stranger would be treated with respect, simply because someone once learned a lesson the hard way. And if you ever see a man sitting quietly, clean shoes, tired eyes, calm posture, don't rush to name him. Don't reduce him to a glance, because he might be carrying more than you can imagine. And even if he isn't, respect doesn't cost $1. They treated him like a beggar, not knowing he had inherited $26 million overnight. But the real inheritance was knowing exactly who he was, long before the world did.